Oh man. Well, according to some people, I could potentially have an issue with my studio and the way I have everything wired up and hooked up in here that could potentially delegitimize every single amp demo that I have done on this channel up till now. Or has it? So you're probably asking yourself, what issue could he possibly be talking about? Well, this issue that could have potentially delegitimized all of my amp demos is known as signal degradation or tone suck. We're going to talk about that today, and we're going to do a few experiments and see if this issue actually does exist in my studio and see what type of impact it's had on my amp demos. Let's get started. Well, thanks for joining me for today's video, and some of you are probably wondering, like, why am I watching this video? What do I care if he's got signal loss or tone suck or whatever in his studio? And I get that. So like, how does this benefit you? Well, one thing I can assure you of is that some degree, all of us guitar players are going to deal with signal degradation or tone suck at a certain level. For some of us, it's negligible. It's so minuscule, it's not even worth addressing. And for others, it's noticeable and worth addressing, but still on the subtle side. And for some of us, it's an absolute nightmare for us to deal with, and we have to address it no matter what. And it really depends on cable length, what type of wireless that you're using, how many pedals you have, whether they have buffers in them or not. There's just so many different factors. And like I said, we're all dealing with it at one degree or another. And I'm going to find out today, what level am I dealing with that issue in this studio? And I will get to the experiments very soon, but I want to give you a little bit of context before I do that. So, how did this all come about? Well, a couple weeks ago, I did a demo of the Fortin Evil Pumpkin, and that sparked a couple of comments in the comment section from people that were upset that I didn't really like the amplifier very much, and they blamed it on my signal path. And they were like, oh, if you didn't have that big pedal board and that amp switcher and all these cables in your room, then the amp would have sounded better and you probably would have liked it, and you don't know how to demo amps properly, and you have all this tone suck and signal loss going on in your room. You should have plugged directly in the amplifier. Why didn't you do that? And you sabotaged the review because of that, and all that kind of stuff. And as much as I didn't appreciate those comments, and as rude as I thought those comments were, I'm willing to put aside my feelings about those comments and not take them personally, and dig through all of that garbage, and maybe there's a little bit of truth hidden in there somewhere. And I'm willing to do this experiment to see how valid those comments really are. So before I do that, let me just give you some more context as to what I use in this room, how I have everything all set up, and why I do it that way. So first of all, here is a picture of my pedal board. Now I know, it's like a freaking aircraft carrier. It's the biggest one that Temple Audio makes, and I got it for a reason. So if you notice on the bottom left, I have the Boss ES8 effect switching system. It's basically a MIDI looping system. So I can have all these pedals hooked up to different loops in there and switch those loops on and off via MIDI whenever I want, depending on what effects I want to use in that particular preset. So when I'm not using that particular loop, all of the cables associated with that preset are not in use. It's all bypassed. So typically when I'm doing an amp dial-in, first impressions demo kind of thing, I start out with the overdrive off. So I'm bypassing the overdrive pedals anyways, but the signal is still flowing through them even though they're off. There's still a bit of signal going through all of those pedals and the loop associated with them. Now, I don't really think that's a big deal regarding signal loss, and we'll find out in a few minutes whether or not it is, but that's pretty much all I'm dealing with when I do these amp demos. Now, I know that I do have cables going from my you know, my pedal board here into my amp switcher, which is pictured here. And the amp switcher is made by KHE, and it's an amazing amp switching system. And I also have an effects loop switching system as well. The effects loops are on the top, the amp switcher's on the bottom, and it switches cabs and amps and everything like that for me. And it's a very high-end system, very well built, and believe it or not, a lot of YouTubers use them. They may or may not talk about that, and I'm not saying they're trying to hide that from you, but it's just part of what we do. So we don't have to hook amps up individually and you know, do demos. It's just easier to hook them into our switching system, especially for comparisons like shootouts and stuff like that. And yes, there are some cables that go from, you know, the pedal board to the amp switcher and the amp switcher to the amplifiers. But, you know, my amp switcher's right here, and, you know, I probably have like, at the most, maybe 10 to 12 feet of cables going across here to these amps, and the rest of them, the cables get shorter as they're closer to the amp switcher. So it's not like I got hundreds of miles of cable like some people have stupidly said in the comment section in some of my videos. It's not like I have all of that. And the cable runs are per amp, you know, so if I'm playing an amp like the Rev, it's right here above it. There's a couple of feet of cables in between there, you know. So it's not like I'm running huge long cable runs to all this stuff. So why do I have all of this stuff hooked up the way that I do? And why do I have like, I don't know, 5 or 6 overdrive pedals on my pedal board? And why do I even need an amp switcher, you know, and a cab switcher and stuff like that? I mean, if I'm just going to demo an amplifier, why don't I just hook in direct? Well, I'll freaking tell you. And I hope this makes sense to some of you guys. So I'm set up here to do demos. This is a demo studio. This is a demo room. So all the stuff that I have on my pedal board is for demo purposes. So in other words, like, I have a collection of amplifiers here, and you know, they all gel differently with different overdrive pedals. So it's nice to have an overdrive pedal collection so that I can pick the best pedal that suits each amplifier as I'm demoing it. I also do videos such as like best overdrives for amp X or amp Y or whatever, and you guys have seen those videos. And in order for me to shoot those pedals out, it's best to have them right next to each other on a board so I can click them on and off accordingly and really know instantly like which one actually does sound and feel better with the amplifier. If I hook my pedals up one at a time and do that, by the time I unhook one pedal and hook another one back in, I've already forgotten how it sounded and felt with that amplifier. You know, even in the minute and a half or 2 minutes that it took me to do that, I've forgotten all that stuff. So how am I supposed to give you guys my talking points and my opinions about that unless I can switch between those pedals quickly and instantly? That's why I have these pedals on this board the way that I do, okay? So I'm not flexing with a bunch of overdrives. I'm literally demoing them, comparing them, shooting them out, and trying to pick the best few pedals to work with each amplifier depending on what kind of episode that I'm doing. Now, why do I have all these amps hooked up to my switcher? Well, number one, it's very easy to shoot out amplifiers when I can switch between them instantly. And same with the pedals, I can give you an instant read on like, how does this amp sound compared to another one? How does it feel compared to another one? And all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, I'm hooking an amp up on a table right here or something like that, playing through it. And then 5 minutes later, I got this, other amplifier all hooked up here, and then I got to play through that. I don't even know if the volume's matched or not because I can't switch between them to know that. And I've forgotten what the other amp sounded like because now I'm playing this one, and it's been 5 or 10 minutes in between that. And I'm like, I don't know what the differences are regarding the characteristics between these two amplifiers now. I've forgotten. So now I have to edit the clips and then get done editing those and then sit back in the chair and give you my thoughts after editing them, but I still don't remember how they felt differently between each other. It just makes no sense. So I have to have this instant back and forth between the amplifiers so that I can give you my true, honest thoughts about them regarding sound and feel. And again, I can volume match them that way. I can't do it when I'm hooking them up separately and having 10 minutes in between them. It's just stupid. So, and on top of all that, I'm trying to keep things efficient here. You know, I don't want to spend 8 hours shooting a freaking video that I'm probably going to make 50, 60 bucks on in ad revenue on YouTube. That's bullshit. Who would do that? You know, honestly, I used to do that before I got efficient with all this stuff. It used to take a lot longer to shoot those videos. Now I can shoot them a lot quicker, and I'm more efficient, and honestly, I'm more accurate with everything as well because, again, I'm doing everything instantly, so I can hear the differences and feel the differences between the amplifiers when I'm doing those videos. So that's pretty much why I have all this stuff hooked up the way that I do, okay? Now, some people are concerned about the whole, you know, tone suck or signal degradation or whatever you want to call it because I have everything hooked up this way. But let's go ahead and do an experiment now, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a riff on all 3 channels of my EVH Stealth, okay? And I'm going to play through these amps 2 different ways in this first part of the experiment. One way is going to be through my wireless, into my pedal board, switcher, into the amp, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to compare how that sounds to just bypassing all this stuff and plugging directly into the front of the amplifier with nothing in between. That's what this cable's for right here. So I'm going to plug directly into the amp and see what the difference is when I do that. And I'm going to line the tracks up next to each other so that you can hear a direct comparison between my whole rig with my pedal board, my wireless, my switcher and everything, and me just plugging directly into the amplifier. And we're going to see what kind of sonic differences there are between those 2 ways of plugging everything in. And after that, I'm going to hook up 2 buffers made by Sir that I got from Motor City Guitar today. I'm going to hook one on the front end of my pedal board and one on the back end of my pedal board. In other words, one on the inside and one on the outside of my pedal board, and see if that can fix the potential issue that I could be having with tone suck. Again, I don't know how much of an issue I have or if I even have an issue at all, but just in case I do have an issue, I'm going to see if those 2 buffers will fix that issue. And then I'm going to compare that setup against plugging directly into the amplifier on all 3 channels. So let's get started with the first experiment now. Now let's do the blue channel. Now let's do the red channel. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, there's very little difference between going through my pedal board and my wireless and all that, and then just hooking directly into the amplifier. And I also, to keep things fair, I disengaged the effects loop as well. That way everything was all even on both ways of playing through the amplifier. Now you're probably wondering, why don't I just use a looper pedal? Well, I want to see the difference in feel as well, okay? So here are the differences that I noticed. Now, I didn't say there were no differences, I just said very little difference. So as far as the differences that I noticed on the clean channel, I noticed that you know, when I plugged in direct, the signal was a little stronger going in, and I was getting a touch of breakup, just a hair of breakup when I was playing the guitar through it. And with the pedal board and the wireless and all that, the signal was slightly lower, and it was just slightly cleaner on the signal going in, and I didn't hear maybe a teeny bit of breakup or hardly any or whatever. I mean, there's just a very little difference between them. Now on the blue channel, I didn't really hear or feel a difference at all. There might have been just a touch more grit in the gain structure when I plugged in direct, and I could say the same for the red channel. Just a little more hair on it, just a little bit more grit, and just a touch of aggression. But it's nothing that would make me like lose my mind and go, oh my God, you know, the signal degradation that I have down here is so bad that I need to reconfigure everything, and I ought to be ashamed of myself, and all my demos that I've done up till today are not legit at all. I mean, that is not the case. It's very subtle, very, very subtle. And is it noticeable? Yeah, if you're really leaning into it and paying attention, you can notice some things, but it doesn't mean that it's a deal breaker at all. Now regarding feel, there's a little bit of difference. I think the amp felt slightly better when I was plugged directly into it. And I think that has to do with just having a little bit of a stronger signal going in, especially with the high gain stuff like the blue and the red channel. I did feel a little more response out of the amplifier. It's nothing that was super, like I said, like a deal breaker or anything like that, but it's something that I noticed. So far, I'm really pleased with the results, and I'm a little relieved too, especially based on some of the comments people were saying and how exasperated they were and how hyperbolic the comments were. I was thinking that there was going to be this huge difference. I've even had people say that if I plugged directly into the amplifier, I would find no need for an overdrive pedal. And the only reason why I use overdrive pedals is because of my horrible, crappy, disgusting pedal board and all the cables associated with that, and my piece of shit amp switcher and all that kind of stuff. That's why I need an overdrive pedal. That is the biggest pile of bullshit I've ever heard in my entire life. Not true at all, because let's face it, if I needed an overdrive pedal because of this pedal board, the signal would have to be so weak going to these amplifiers that, I mean, I think I would know that. And I do play amplifiers outside of this room as well. I've played plenty of amps up in my living room, and I would have noticed something by now. And I can tell you right now, whatever kind of signal loss I'm getting because of this equipment that I'm running everything through is minuscule. It's not 20 decibels at all. It's probably 1 or 2 decibels. And I know that that can make a difference, especially if you're one of those cork sniffing hair splitters that everything matters for. And I understand that, but I'm just telling you right now, there's hardly any difference. It's almost negligible. But because I can notice it, I'm willing to explore further and install those buffer units right now and see what the difference is after I do that. So I'm going to get started on that right now, and I'll be back after I get all that stuff installed. All right, so now I have both buffers installed. I have one at the beginning of my signal chain and one at the end of my signal chain. That way I can basically take care of this signal degradation or tone suck problem. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing that I did in the first experiment. I'm going to go through all 3 channels and play the same riffs through my pedal board first, and the SIRs, and my wireless, and the whole deal, and then I'm going to compare that to just plugging directly into the amplifier with a cable. So here we go. Now let's do the blue channel. Now let's do the red channel. All right, so here are my findings. I feel like even with the buffers, there's still a bit of a difference between using my pedal board and just going in direct. The other thing I wanted to do, but I didn't get a chance to pick up, was having a clean signal boost at the end of the chain as opposed to a buffer, and maybe that would help things better. So if you have tried that, please comment below on your findings with that. Maybe I'll go back to Motor City Guitar tomorrow and pick up one of those. I think Exotic makes one, and maybe I'll try that at the end of the chain as opposed to the buffer, and just give it a little more signal at the end. So I can clean up the signal at the beginning with the buffer and shove a better high quality signal through everything, and at the end I can give that a little boost. Maybe that will help, because I didn't really notice a big difference with the buffers, and I know I got them hooked up right. I got one at the beginning and one at the end of the chain, and I didn't hear or feel a big difference at all with the buffers on my pedal board compared to with them not being there. So I would probably just, you know, save the money and not use them, or like I said, I'll get the signal booster, the clean, I think it's called the super clean or something like that, signal boost, and put that at the end and see how that works out. So stay tuned to that. Maybe I'll do some more you know, experiments with that. But as far as I'm concerned though, my overall worries or concerns regarding my demos not being up to a certain level of quality because I'm running through this pedal board and all these cables and the switcher and all that, I'm not, you know, my concerns about that have been completely taken care of. I'm not worried about it at all. It's not a big difference. I do notice a slight difference between plugging in direct and using my pedal board and stuff like that, but it's nothing that's degrading my signal so much that, you know, I should scrap all my videos and start over and just plug in direct from now on. So, and the thing is most of us guitar players use a pedal board. And a lot of us use wireless systems and stuff like that because we're on stage, it's easier, it's more convenient, you're not tripping over cables and stuff like that. And you're going to use effects both in front of and in the effects loop of your amplifier. So, I mean, it's just, to me, it's just normal to have a little bit of that signal loss because of that, and it's okay. You know, as long as it's not just trashing your signal to the point where it's like, oh my God, your amp sounds like so anemic or wimpy or whatever. So all of these hyperbolic, over the top, ridiculously stupid, worthless, and dumb statements that I've been reading about, you know, all this stuff is just, it's way too much. It's way over the top. And a lot of people saying this kind of stuff are just parroting stuff that they read somewhere so that they can sound smart, because they have to do something to make up for the fact that they're a shitty guitar player. So that's pretty much what it is for the most part, you know. And some of you are probably like, well, you're getting pretty edgy with your comments here. Well, I'm just matching the energy with all the hyperbolic comments that I've been getting. So I'm responding in kind to some of that stuff. Is there some truth to that? To some degree, yes. Does it make a big difference? No, absolutely not. Does it make a slight difference? Yeah. Yep. It's a little bit different when you're hooking up to a pedal board or when you're plugging directly into an amplifier. There is a slight difference there. And I will be on a quest to try to remedy that with maybe, like I said earlier, a clean boost pedal or something like that at the end of the chain, or maybe at the beginning of the chain I'll put the buffer at the end. I don't know. I'll figure it out. So I'm relieved that all my demos that I've done are still legit. And I'm glad I did this test because I learned something. I learned that these buffers, I mean, I don't know if they're really doing much at all, but I mean, I tried it and I found out that there's not a big difference. I was hoping it would be like the exact same, or at least really close to plugging in, but there's still a little bit of difference there. And I don't think it's worth the money yet with these, but we'll see when I get that clean, super clean boost pedal and put that at the end or the beginning of the chain, see how that changes things. But anyways, all my videos that I did are staying up. If 100% is perfect, maybe I'm 99%, you know? What's a percentage point, you know? So far, everything down here sounds good either way. You're definitely getting a little bit stronger signal on the input of the amp, you know, than with the pedal board and stuff. But I think it's more noticeable on the clean channel. As soon as you get into the high gain stuff with all the compression and all the gain and stuff, I don't think it's really mattering as much. So anyways, I hope you guys got something out of this video. I will continue my quest with this and see what happens down the road. So to all my Patreon supporters and subscribers, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And if you're new to the channel and you like what I do here, which is basically, well, I guess example today is some experimenting or some honest gear reviews that have no processing pre or post in them. Feel free to subscribe, click the bell so that you can be notified every time I either go live or come out with another episode. Well, I got a lot more stuff coming up for you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.